Good evening. Welcome back to the Ask Me Anything with Dr. Twyman. Can help you guys become heart attack proof if I haven't already. So nice to meet you. I've been doing these IG lives since 2020 during the pandemic, trying to help people optimize their sleep, stress, nutrition, and exercise. Founded Apollo Cardiology in 2019 because I got tired of treating vascular disease at the end stage when people were having heart attacks and strokes, and we wanted to devote my career to preventing those events. So that's what I've been doing with my great team at Apollo Cardiology. And I've been helping educate the people that come to see me one-on-one, as well as the people who follow me on social media and through the various podcasts I've been on. So I do have a school community, which, there's a free to 7-day trial if people want to check it out, no obligation, but do monthly, AMAs there. Had one recently where very few people showed up. So somebody got to speak to me for 30 minutes, asking multiple questions about various topics that they were interested in. I have courses in there, how to read your own labs, how not to die, basically what testing you need to do with myself, or if you're working with your primary care doctor, what test to consider to help you become heart attack proof. So again, if you're interested, there's a free 7-day trial. It's drtwyman.com/school. And that's where I'm mostly active, putting my educational material when I'm not on other podcasts. So with that being said, got a few questions tonight to answer for you. So first question up tonight is, can I help people fix their heart issues or just arteries? I can do both. I'm a board certified, vascular specialist. So it's not just the heart. You have 60,000 miles of blood vessels. So I try to help all the blood vessels that I can. I do help people with cardiomyopathies, but I don't really focus on heart rhythm issues anymore. I know how to manage, some of the basic ones, but just not my area of expertise anymore. And I don't have the same tools I had access to when I was still on staff at various hospitals. So I usually refer to my good colleagues that I did training with and trust them with, people who I consider family. So people have rhythm issues. I have good colleagues, in St. Louis, as well as I can refer people to other centers as needed. But definitely help people fix their heart issues. Your heart has a heavy mitochondrial density. So life's about energy in your mitochondria. So this is what I talk about frequently with my patients. So that's why I'm still wearing the blue, black, and glasses to help my circadian rhythms. So I talk about photobiomodulation with people who are interested in red light therapy. This is why I talk about sauna and grounding. So definitely possible. But if you're interested in having me be that doctor, and I don't already work with you, you can go to my website, drtwyman.com. There's an application that my team will review and discuss the logistics if you're interested in working with us. Next question, does diet soda contribute or make CAD worse? No studies show that it would. I can tell I was a former soda addict. People may not know that about me if they haven't known me for a while, but used to consume vast quantities of Dr. Pepper when I was in medical school. I was much heavier at that point. I had no idea what I was doing nutrition, lifestyle-wise. Didn't know any of these quantum biology stuff at that point. Just was drinking a ton of caffeine to, study like crazy, because it's like drinking from a fire hose with the information you learn during your medical training. So eventually switched to Diet Dr. Pepper. Weight came off, but the artificial sweeteners, they're probably not that dangerous, but they're not necessarily good for you. So I would generally ask people why they consume the diet soda. Is it for the caffeine? Well, as long as caffeine isn't something that causes you palpitations or issues with anxiety or issues with hypertension or issues with falling asleep, then potentially consume the caffeine in sources that are more beneficial, like tea or coffee. If you just like the carbonation, then switch up to carbonated water. That's what I ended up doing. Next question of tonight. Somebody says that their knee started hurting yesterday. Is this because I put on 8 pounds over the holidays? Not necessarily, but did you eat different than you would normally eat? Typically knee pain is going to be an inflammatory response. So, if you overdid it on, gluten-containing foods or you ate more carbs than you're used to, yes, you might have more inflammation that might drive it. But weight definitely can have an effect on the musculoskeletal system. So, win the day, get back to controlling the controllables. You can control the amount of water you put in the system. You can control the food you put in your system. You can try to control the, the amount of stress that you allow in the day, and you can control the hours that you try to get your sleep. So control the controllables. All right. Next question up tonight. The person says that they're a 42-year-old with a cholesterol over 300 and an elevated CRP. What tests are recommended for arteries? So a cholesterol over 300, depending on is this your baseline or is this something new, can be a marker that you have familial hyperlipidemia. So genetic testing can look at LDL receptors, ApoE, can look at ApoB to figure out why your cholesterol is elevated. CRP is a global marker of inflammation, but should look at vascular inflammatory markers like Lp(a)2 activity and myeloperoxidase. But more importantly, you should look at what's going on with the arteries. Do you have plaque in your carotid arteries with a carotid endometrial thickness scan? Do you have plaque in your coronary arteries with either a CT coronary calcium score or a CT coronary angiogram? And then if patients work with me, I'm doing testing that looks at vascular endothelial function, vascular pulse wave velocity, central rate of blood pressure, trying to figure out what is the current state of the artery health. And then somebody says, am I familiar with the Leela quantum products? If so, thoughts? I do have one of their pendants that has the beads in it. What do I think of it? Interesting. Does it work? Unknown. I was almost a physics major in college. I was a math major. And my understanding of radiation is that, it's the inverse square law. The further you're away from the radiation source, the better. Or you have to use proper shielding. Does this thing really mitigate EMFs? Unknown. According to their marketing, it does. But I can tell you, if you hold this thing in your hand, it does feel different. Hard to quantify what that means. But if I actually wore this as a necklace and it's sitting over your heart, it makes me feel odd, let's say. Not bad, but I feel some type of sensation. Not having heart rhythm issues with it, I don't think. But I personally don't like it, and so I don't utilize it anymore. But I did take a look at it when they initially came out. All right, so those were the pre-submitted questions. Let's see if there's anything in the comments coming by. Doesn't look like anything just yet. See some familiar faces here. So if anybody has just logged on, all the archives of these videos are always in the Instagram feed for at least a month, but they're usually in my main board is just the little picture, just a bunch of pictures of my face, because this is all I'm really posting on Instagram right now. If you're looking for the longer form content, that's usually going to be reserved for my school community, which is drtwyman.com/school. And then I do put these eventually on YouTube, these Instagram lives, after I put them through an AI filter, and it transcribes it and puts the content into the description box for me. So if you're interested in that, try to keep it simple. It's drtwyman.tv. It links to my YouTube channel. So somebody did put a comment in here. So their daughter is 19 years old. They have an LDL cholesterol of 120. What are my thoughts? That, potentially could be elevated. If, it's something where it stays that way for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the person could be at increased risk of atherosclerosis. But LDL cholesterol is not the whole story. If you only have access to a traditional lipid panel, you want to look at the non-HDL, because that will look at more of the atherogenic type particles. Non-HDL is similar enough to ApoB and LDL particle, not as predictive, but if that's what you got, that's what you got. But that is not necessarily cause for concern that, the person at 19 has familial hyperlipidemia. So, I wouldn't be recommending pharmaceutical intervention to begin with. But if there's evidence of inflammation, then maybe you have to talk about some lifestyle interventions. So is this LDL-C because the person's on a keto diet? They're doing a lot of carb loading, they're fasting, they're not exercising. So there's a lot of things that go into the LDL cholesterol. Do I recommend including more carbohydrates to reduce LDL cholesterol? On occasion I have, but that is not a standard recommendation. The only time I usually will see that is if a person is doing a high-fat carnivore type diet or keto diet, and their LDL cholesterol increases to, I've seen north of 400 milligrams a deciliter of LDL cholesterol when people are on some of these diets. It's often an issue that the liver upregulates the production of the lipoproteins, and then at the same time downregulates the LDL receptor. So you just have high volumes of lipoproteins. In some of those individuals, if they reintroduce some carbohydrates, that process will slow down, and you'll see at least I consider a significant reduction in LDL cholesterol. But it's all about what's going on with the arteries. I don't treat just what's in the blood. I treat the actual downstream effects. Is it causing vascular inflammation? Is it causing endothelial dysfunction? Is it actually causing plaque? Treat that. The cholesterol is just one part of the equation. This is a question I don't have an answer to. Is at what heart rate does the heart reach maximal expansion? The heart really doesn't change in size much with exercise. The stroke volume, does pick up mostly because of the heart rate. It's not necessarily the stroke volume changing much. And then somebody did submit a question through my stories. So what causes edema in the ankles if you have microvascular dysfunction? Depends if you're on certain medications that you're using for microvascular dysfunction. Often those patients are on calcium channel blockers, and that will oftentimes cause edema in the ankles if the person's not also on an ACE inhibitor or angiotensin receptor blocker. If the edema is persistent throughout the day, then it's more likely it's going to be a medication. If it's that the swelling improves when you elevate the legs or after sleeping, then it's potentially more venous insufficiency. It's a venous problem, not necessarily a arterial problem. So we need a physical exam. Do you have normal kidney function? Do you have normal liver function? Normal thyroid function? You don't have microalbuminuria? And that's really what will help kind of guide you. Should you be doing something different than what you're doing? But oftentimes it's a medication that drives it. So the person says the 9-HDL was 142. So, that is, mildly elevated. If the person has plaque in their arteries already, I usually shoot for at least less than 100. If the person is relatively young, 130 is probably the target to start with. And they don't have lipoprotein A, that's good. So everybody has lipoprotein A, but 20% of the population has elevated levels of LPA. And increased LPA is more atherogenic, meaning more likely to cause plaque, more thrombogenic, more likely to cause the blood to clot. What's my opinion on a carnivore and keto diet? It's pretty long-winded. I've done 2-hour podcasts on this topic before, so if you just search for my name and look for carnivore diets, you'll come up with something. But the short answer is they are dietary strategies. A lot of diets can work for people, so it's test, don't guess. If the diet is controlling what you wanted to control, your weight, your brain fog, your gut health, whatever, but it affects your lipids, then what do you want to do about your lipids? Do you want to take medications for the lipids? Do you want to change your diet? What is going on with your arteries? It's the test, don't guess philosophy, is that if you change your diet and your arteries are getting worse, is it that wise to stay on that diet? So, without being treated medically. So I don't have an opinion that it's necessarily good or bad. It's, if you're on it, we're going to treat what we find if there's a problem. So I see a couple of people requesting to be live in the video. I don't necessarily do those anymore. If people want to do live one-on-one kind of conversations with me, that is generally done in the school community when I do the AMAs there. All right. I don't see any other comments or questions coming in tonight. I do always appreciate your guys, logging on 6 p.m. Central Time and joining me with this. I always enjoy educating. I enjoy, sometimes being stumped by the questions because that helps me get better to treat the patients I see at Apollo. And then it helps me when I'm on the podcast circuit and people ask me questions, say, do I know about this device or have I tried something? Usually I have, or I learned from one of you guys that you've tried it and it worked for you or didn't work for you. And then I'll answer one last question because it popped in here, and then I'll let you guys go for tonight. So someone says, is your blood oxygen important? What is low? Yes, it's very important. Without oxygen, your mitochondria have a hard time making energy. So what is low? Well, it depends. But if you're consistently less than 90%, probably need to look into why it's low. Are you in a hypoxic environment? At altitude? Do you have lung disease? Chronic pulmonary disease, obstructive pulmonary disease? Do you have a shunt in your heart? Like, there's some reasons why your oxygen concentration is low. So may need it to work up, particularly if the person's short of breath or symptomatic from it. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you next time.